Thank you very much, Luca. And when Luca last introduced me last week in Copenhagen, she said every time she meets me, I say something that scares her, and the next time she meets me, it has become true. And so maybe I can do the same thing today as well with all of you. A very warm welcome also from my side. German Chancellor Merz gave a big speech this week in front of the German Parliament on Tuesday. He made pretty strong statements on the foreign policy challenges that are ahead, how Germany needs to regain economic strength, and he emphasized the need for more European competitiveness. He sent a strong message across the Atlantic, saying Brussels was ready to negotiate, but also had the means to strike back in case no agreement was found. In 28 minutes and on 11 pages of written manuscript, he managed to mention China 0 times. That is a problem. It distorts a reality that Europe is facing to an absurd degree. Europe is currently facing dual coercion: tariff threats from the United States and rare earth export restrictions from China. One of these threats has the potential to immediately halt production in Europe and cripple its economic base. And let me just tell you, it's not the US tariffs. Please allow me to make 3 points. Number one, the China challenge is different, and it's worse for the European economy than Trump's erratic trade policy. Not only because China is the strategic enabler of Russia's military aggression against Ukraine, the China challenge cuts to the core of Europe's, and particularly Germany's, identity as industrial and manufacturing powerhouse. Or in the words of Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who last week at the G7 meeting put it very aptly, China is pursuing a strategy, and I quote, of dominance, dependency, and blackmail. Dominance is the goal not only for a few strategic sectors, no, the aim is to dominate the entirety of the value chain, vertically integrate it, and across basically all relevant industrial products, from clean tech to the auto industry, from rare earths to machine tools. Dependency is closely related to this idea. The world is supposed to be more dependent on China, while China is less dependent on the world. Beijing is maximizing security for a paranoid leadership that is preparing for war. Our response to dominance and dependence has been the idea of de-risking and diversification. And while the Chinese leadership has been aggressively pursuing its own 2Ds, Europe has only hesitantly embraced its own. This is coming back to haunt us now. On April 4th of this year, 2 days after Trump's tariff Liberation Day, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce presented Announcement 18, implementing export controls on specific rare earth elements and magnets. As everyone knows, the dependence on China is enormous in this area. All of the restricted goods are used in the defense industry, in the auto sector, and in the energy industry. It was a response to US tariffs, but not just US companies are affected. Everyone is. Japanese companies, Indian companies, and yes, European companies as well. They all have to go through a tough licensing process now. Companies have to not only provide sensitive details about end users and customers, but also about the products themselves, production processes, and company structure. So the Chinese leadership is impacting production and adding cost, yes, but it's also generating an extraordinary amount of economic intelligence that can and will be used to further enhance the ability to inflict highly targeted pain on global supply chains. It's a massively sharp sword that the Chinese leadership can wield because it has direct impact. Factories have to close if materials don't arrive in time. German automakers are currently scrambling to get their own diplomatic channels in place. Japanese automakers had to shut down select production lines. US companies had to do the same. Companies right now are basically willing to do anything just to make this problem go away. This is nothing other than state-organized blackmail, and we have to call it out as such. But Europe's response has been muted. Public outrage is muffled. Every company in every country is fighting for themselves, for that little hint of competitive advantage, and only playing into the hands of the Communist Party. Beijing has understood the value of applying just enough pressure to get industries to comply, and not quite enough to generate a collective response. At the same time, China's business model gradually eliminates market opportunities for European companies in the Chinese market and radically transforms the international landscape and limits European business opportunities at home and in third markets. European countries still make stuff. More than 30 million jobs are directly connected to the manufacturing industry, more than 20 million indirectly. Given a working population of around 200 million people, you can do the math yourself. We're talking about a quarter of all European jobs potentially being affected. This situation constitutes an existential threat, not only to European prosperity, but also to social stability, democracy, and fundamentally European security. We don't have to act on China because of the US. We have to act because we are directly affected. There are some in Europe that believe that we're in a bad spot and then we have to strike a deal with Beijing, that the EU-China summit that's coming up at the end of July should just be used to find any kind of agreement, even if not entirely beneficial to Europe, that we cannot fight a two-front trade war. I'm afraid we might have to. Brings me to my second point. There is currently no deal, no shiny opportunity with China, even if we really, really try, and even if we really want it. There's a grand illusion that it is hard to get rid of and has persisted for 25 years. The illusion that Europe can negotiate with China and find mutually agreeable and enforceable solutions that last. In 2001, this was what underpinned China's membership in the WTO and the commitments we made. Everything was taken at face value. The Chinese leadership kept asking for more time, asking the world to be patient, while they were transforming towards a market economy. The problem is we're still waiting. Since then, we here in Europe have been trying constantly to navigate the growing list of concerns. But Chinese leaders now negotiate from a position of strength, and they intend to keep it that way. There's no room for growing market shares in China, no willingness to share technology, no desire to actually compete. Chinese companies are currently losing customers in the US and have to sell more at home. The idea that under these conditions, a trend of a rapidly shrinking European slice of that Chinese market could be reversed seems logically absurd. Beijing will happily pretend to open up more, to grant market access in new fields, but it has proven to do so only in areas that Chinese companies either already safely dominate or that have become basically irrelevant. The Chinese leadership really doesn't feel that it has to compromise. There's no charm offensive underway. We would just like to believe that there is. Xi Jinping was not even willing to come to Brussels to celebrate the 50th anniversary of EU-China diplomatic relations. There is no offer on the table from Beijing that looks in any way different from what they were willing to do before Trump unleashed tariff mayhem on the world. The Chinese leadership will not remember that Europe was kind while Trump was tough, and thus be generous and forthcoming. The Chinese leadership sees that Europe is weak and believes that it will never be united enough to come up with a tough response. If you are weak, you will be taken advantage of. That is the historic lesson that the Communist Party has learned and internalized. Every moment of relative strength has to be used to maximize gains and tilt the balance further. We have negotiated in good faith for decades. We've taken measures according to our own rules. We have not put 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs, but have taken a measured and rules-based response. If we walk that back in light of Chinese coercion, we give in to a bully and invite more coercion. And the world is watching. Which brings me to my last point. It's now or never, but it's not too late. The Chinese economy is under enormous pressure. The US-China trade war is hurting Chinese exporters. Export controls can still painfully hurt Chinese development from the semiconductor industry to the aerospace sector. Europe, theoretically, has significant leverage. Theoretically, because if you aren't willing to use it, it ain't leverage. What we have to ask ourselves honestly is if we're finally ready to change tactics, if we're willing to respond to coercion and actually negotiate. Are we willing to threaten to close off our market in crucial sectors to Chinese goods? Are we willing to tightly restrict high-tech exports? French Safran engines are currently powering China's potentially competitive civilian aircraft. They don't have to. Are we willing to restrict investments to China? Are we willing to enforce our own rules on data protection and cybersecurity? Are we willing to really sanction Chinese banks and companies that support Moscow's war machinery? As long as the collective answer to this is no, we have no leverage. The Chinese leadership would prefer Europe to be weak and disunited because that's much easier to deal with. But it will also deal with a Europe that is stronger if it has to, just on different terms. So we have to create these terms. But we also have to fight the fatalists. Being fatalistic about things is easy. The fatalist would like you to believe that we have lost already, that we should spend our energy on adjusting to a new global trading order with Beijing at the core and accept the new dominance of China. Trust me, a lot of German companies have strong fatalist tendencies and always find a way to make money. But just ask our Japanese colleagues here in the room or friends from all over the world. There are so many countries around the world that wish they had our problems, that wish that they had a magic buffer of 44% non-tariff barriers in the single market that they could just like that eliminate and boost their own competitiveness if they just wanted to. Europe has a serious industrial backbone. It does not need to reindustrialize. It just needs to stop deindustrializing. Europe has an enormous pool of innovative talent. Europe is currently awash with cash that seeks stable investment opportunities. And even the most frugal countries, I'm based in Berlin, see the need for stepping up investment. Europe has partners in the rest of the world that are just waiting for us to seize the opportunity and to step up. But currently, these partners have limited trust that we will. I think it's on us to prove them wrong. Thank you very much.